how do renunciation, compassion, and devotion relate to each other in one's personal development and the evolution of their practice?
I think renunciation, for a start, is a very difficult one for Westerners to get their minds around. It's very noticeable that many people, in a way, expect to complete the whole path and get enlightened in one lifetime without ever giving up the slightest thing ever, in any way. Other people assume that renunciation means, giving up everything and going off and living, in a cave or in the wilderness. And the whole idea that renunciation is a moment-to-moment thing of actually giving up the ego. That's what we're giving up. It's not our outer possessions or our relationships per se, but the demands of the ego. And as a help in learning what perfect renunciation is, then compassion can help. Because we realize that we are not just one. I mean, the whole problem for all of us, really, is that the whole universe revolves around each one of us. Recently, I was in New York, and we were in this apartment which was on the 28th floor. And at night, overlooking Manhattan, you saw all these thousands upon thousands of lights all the way up the towers. And to think that in each one was peopled by, beings who, to each one, they themselves were all sufficient. Each one. Thousands and thousands and thousands of lights all out there. Everyone with their own problems, their own worries, their own concerns. Each one, their own concerns and worries were the center of everything. And when one thinks about that, and one's own predicament, then compassion naturally arises. And when that kind of compassion arises, one begins to see how one is so enclosed in one's ego domination. And then the idea of renunciation makes sense. Because we see that our obsession with our own wants and dislikes and hopes and fears is what keeps us so in suffering, as the Buddha said. And that the way to freedom is to drop it. And that is another word for renouncing. It's not that you just renounce, having another, new suit next month or something. It's nothing to do with that. It's to do with this whole idea of being completely covered and obsessed by all the ego's drives. And that each one of us is like that. So within a family there's conflict, within businesses there's conflict, within the country there's conflict, within the world there's conflict. Because each of us is driven by this inability to see beyond our own needs and concerns. And there's no compassion, because we don't recognize that the person that we're looking at is ourselves reflected. And a way to develop both this renunciation and this compassion of recognition that all beings are just a reflection of our own inner being, and both on a higher level and in our pain, is through opening the heart. And one of the quickest ways to learn to open the heart is to open the heart to something which embodies for us genuine wisdom, genuine love, genuine purity in the true sense. And that is usually embodied in the presence of the teacher. So if we can open ourselves to that, then that points out to us our true being, which is not the being that we normally cling to. And from that, naturally develops this lack of interest in feeding this false sense of self. And from that, also that sense of interpenetration with all the other beings who are caught in the same trap. So of course they all go together. In the West, people misunderstand devotion because they're so desperate to have someone just to tell them what to do and to sort out their life for them. And they think that if they can find the perfect teacher, they're going to click their finger or say the mantra, and all their worries are going to disappear. But in fact, if you find a lama, a teacher, then probably that's when your problems really start. And to have genuine devotion through that means a genuine openness. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, as is well known, says that you should inspect a teacher for up to 12 years, meaning that one shouldn't be gullible. And just because someone's sitting there up on a high throne, beaming and looking absolutely lovely, doesn't mean that that's your heart teacher. And one should certainly, as much as possible, use one's discriminatory abilities to really look into it. What are the people like around them? And what effect long-term does he have on his students? Would I want to be like one of his students? Do they seem to me like the kind of people I'd want to turn out being, the long-term ones? I mean, one time, because Trungpa Rinpoche was so controversial, I asked Kamta Rinpoche, who knew him very well, both in Tibet and in India, what he really thought about Rinpoche, Trungpa Rinpoche. And he said, at that level, it's very difficult to know, and wait 20 years and look at his students. And one has to say that some of the students one sees of certain lamas and teachers, you'd wonder, is it the lama's fault or what? Do they truly embody the Dharma mind? Are they kinder? It's true, it's true to ask. Are they nicer than ordinary people? Kinder, more compassionate, more thoughtful? I mean, some very high lamas I know have said to me that, isn't it interesting that in the West, the people you meet on the street, just ordinary people who have not any interest usually even in religion at all, are so much nicer than people you meet in Dharma centers. And they get the red carpet when they go to Dharma centers, so how they even know? Something somewhere is often being mixed. It's not true for all. I mean, there are certain people who have followed certain lamas who are exemplary, truly beautiful people. But alas, that is not always the case.